Hi, everybody. My name is Mike Manning.
And I'm Trinity French.
And we are your business coaches at Wired to Change.
With the number 2.
We are here to help you grow your business to the level you want it to be so you can enjoy the life of a small business owner.
And every day that life gets better and better. And some days it really sucks, but usually it keeps getting better.
Well, good. We have a guest who will probably agree with both of those statements in a second, but it is nice to be able to pick your schedule.
Yes.
Just know that if you take Thursday and Friday off, you better backfill that sales funnel.
Absolutely.
On Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of funnels.
Yes.
I think that our next guest would be familiar with funnel cakes.
Yes.
Because they're served at NASCAR events. That was a stretch. But
not as far as you think sometimes. At the smaller tracks, it would be a
very, 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 very special guest, the one, the only, Mr. David Smith. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
We're excited to have you because usually I have kindred spirits on the show that I feel like I have a ton in common with. And this time it's you and Mike that have a lot in common. And I'm the odd man out because the only thing that I know about NASCAR racing is that crashes are fun. And
oh no!
And I would love to go to a race at some point just for the people watching.
NASCAR is a feel and experience sport. When you're down on pit road or on the infield and you can feel and hear and smell the cars go by, it changes your appreciation of the sport. And I didn't know that till I started working at Daytona and I was down in the infield. It's like, oh, this is a whole different world down here. Would you agree on that, David?
Yeah, I think so. And it's, I was always a fan growing up, but when I started working in the sport and especially seeing sort of the evolution of team building, the sort of the good old boy mechanics went by the wayside maybe in the mid 90s. And it very quickly became an engineering first mindset. And there's a lot of money being pushed into the sport, but all that money bred innovation. So, now we have Stuart Haas Racing in Kannapolis, North Carolina, has a Formula One team on its campus. They have the continent's only rolling road wind tunnel. You have the different manufacturers.
What the heck is a rolling road wind tunnel?
It can simulate any track profile, however a track feels, how it's banked. It just changes based on the dynamic they need it to.
That's so cool.
It is, the sport has become increasingly futuristic to a point that one of the hot subjects this week was the defending champion, Kyle Busch, was eliminated from the playoffs very early in the playoffs. And the chief reason why is because him and his crew chief was very good at building fast race cars. But this season in NASCAR, it has not been speed that has been dictating wins and success. It has been something called track position, where you're going to base an entire race strategy, a pit strategy, when you take fuel, how you take tires, and it's boosting slower cars up the running order. So the defending champ with the fastest car was getting very frustrated, and there's trouble a brewing for that team going into next year. And that's something that they're going to have to rectify if they want to even survive in this sport.
And that won't make every NASCAR fan unhappy that Kyle Busch did not advance, but we're not here to talk NASCAR today. It'll be involving NASCAR, but David is a wonderful story. So full disclosure here, I've known David since I think 2000 at least, probably 1999 when my family moved to Daytona. David's father, Hardy, was coaching an AAU team through Embry-Riddle University. And Hardy and I met, and he asked me to, become one of the assistant coaches. So David played on the team. My oldest son, Travis, played on the team, and Cameron played on the team. So we've known the Smith family for years. And I hope your dad's listening to this. Your dad, one of the finest people walking the planet. I've just one of my favorite all-time people, and just as good a dude as there is walking the planet. So, but David's story is unbelievable at times where he is today, because he started scouting drivers that weren't even in NASCAR. They're running at these little tiny local tracks that either you knew about or never heard of. There was no middle ground. And you started your version of scouting, much like all these college football and college basketball services, Mel Kiper, for the NFL, looking at college guys, these college guys looking at high school guys, stuff like that. You started this to find the drivers. You started ranking them every week. And then how long did it take before car owners at different levels started calling you to get your information on these drivers?
Yeah, that was the original website, davidsmithmotorsports.com. It was maybe 2 years before job offers started rolling in, and I had been making contacts at the time. There was a touch and go period, and this was all out of my dorm room in college, but there was a touch and go period where I was seriously considering leaving for an internship that could have become a job traveling with Chip Ganassi Racing. And that didn't materialize, but I had done enough networking during that time that eventually hit upon a sports agency in Daytona, Sullivan Worldwide Marketing Group. Greg Sullivan was a gentleman who pitched the deal on behalf of NASCAR for Nextel and Sprint. And
let me say, I love that push to talk Nextel phone. I was one of the few I know. Exactly. I was a big fan of that. It was so easy to use.
Yeah. And that was, that's actually what helped him build his small business. So worked through him to sort of understand the inner workings of the sport from that regard. But on the scouting side, eventually it was an agency in the Charlotte area, Motorsports Management International, that contacted me, asked to be part of their scouting staff. And from there, moved to Charlotte right before the 2007 NASCAR season. And I would say maybe 2.5 straight years I spent every weekend in a different city, just a different short track, watching young race car drivers, sitting through all weather conditions, rooting for no red flags to stop the race. But that was it. I mean, it was a long hunt, but I built my network from there. I scouted for 13 years. I didn't travel for that long, but I had built a network that was reliable enough, and eventually a statistical system that was reliable enough to help me carry on scouting from afar.
What I liked about it is you did two things. One is you started.
Yeah.
You just started. And you weathered through like 2 years of, I don't know where this is going to go, because I don't believe you're making any money from it yet in those first 2 years. But we like letting people know that stories like this can happen. You have a passion, you have a dream. You're like, you know what? I want to do something in that field. Let me see if I can create something.
Yeah. And I think it was that passion. It was the wanting to be in the field that pushed me to be better within it. The scouting very early on was, as you said, I mean, it was subjective, but I was hanging 5-star, 4-star and naming prospects that way. And then it wasn't until I had a job with an agency, and I was the only 22-year-old scout. Everyone else was 40 or older. And there was never realistically any way I was going to compete with the difference in experience in that room. But I wanted to be good at the job, and I wanted my voice to be heard. So one of the things I did, I was a big fan of basketball, still am. John Hollinger was writing for ESPN.com at the time, and he was heavy into statistical analysis in evaluating NBA players. So that was the impetus for sort of diving headfirst into stats and analysis. This was around the time in the mid 2000s when NASCAR was applying scoring loops around different racetracks. Now it's just based on GPS data, but it's collecting every movement, every pass that you can't see with your own eyes, every jostle for position, it's counted. And at the time, no one had really utilized that to evaluate young drivers. So I took that on, and the whole what I have created now, which is a hub for stats and analysis, was purely built on selfishness, just wanting to be a better scout within the agency that I was working with. And I think that's what took place.
Have we lost you yet?
No, I was just trying to figure out how you monetized that.
So very early on, davidsmithmotorsports.com, I was writing articles, and I placed everything behind a paywall. Eventually, that website evolved into motorsportsanalytics.com, and I kept the paywall up. I knew that this would probably prevent me growing a following if I had offered free scouting tips or free articles. Yeah, I'm going to have more people reading it, but I was not going to be compensated for my time. And for me personally, the most valuable currency in the world is time, because you can't ever get it back once it's gone.
True.
And
that was our podcast we just taped, was getting time back.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, it means so much to me. I have to be compensated for it. I'm pretty thorough. As Mike knows, I used to be thorough with videotape watching for youth basketball. I'm equally as thorough in watching NASCAR races. I'll watch a race up to 3 times in the span of a week after it happens. And that isn't easy. That's not, you have to do, build your life around it to make sure that it fits. So it was important for me to establish that I was a paid writer, a paid analyst, and that's continued. Everything that I have done has been monetized in some form or fashion. The following has grown since then, but most importantly, if I'm going to an outlet where I can potentially contribute, they realize they're talking to someone who is a monetized writer, and that has never been a point of concern for me.
That's awesome.
I know you got questions. I know you got. Well, so Jeff Gordon's retired, just so you know. So you don't have to ask David how he's doing this year. Okay.
That might be the only person's name that I would even recognize when it comes to the sport.
Well, and it doesn't help, David. The Trinity's just horrible at pop culture, so I knew NASCAR. She's probably not going to know many people. So.
No,
that's all right. Jeff Gordon, by the way, I think he was fine.
Fox.
Yeah, he'll do fine. Yeah, he doesn't have a revenue problem these days.
He's got a bank account. He's good. He's good. Yeah.
Who are some of the celebrities in some of these races Trinity might have heard of that the Rolex and stuff like that you've come across?
Oh yeah, for the Rolex. Yeah. No, who's the doctor? Patrick Dempsey.
Yeah.
Oh, I know who that is.
See, now
he's actually an avid sports car racer.
Really?
You know who else ran in the Rolex when I moved to Daytona was Paul Newman.
Like from Newman's
like the Sting, Paul Newman, the actor. Oh yeah.
I don't know who that is.
Dude. She knows him from the salad dressing.
Dude, yes. Really? Oh gosh.
Sorry
you had to hear that, David. You and Scott read the Sting this weekend. Robert Redford, have you heard of him?
Yes.
Okay, good movie.
Heard of him.
Seriously good movie. So, but yeah, so there's some celebrities.
Like good back in the day when you were young, or like still good?
It's a con. They're playing a con the whole movie, and it is excellent.
Did you just give away the whole movie to me?
No, I said they played a con.
Okay.
I didn't tell you how it ended.
Okay.
But Newman and Redford were very good. So, but yeah, so there were some celebrities in racing. She knows Patrick Dempsey, but not Paul Newman. I love that.
Look, that's all right. Newman, the more successful driver of the two. Paul Newman was a Rolex 24 winner.
Oh yeah.
Driving for Jack Roush. Yeah.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I only know him from the salad dressing, so you're welcome.
Do you like the salad dressings?
I don't know. I don't think I've ever had them. I just familiar with the commercials.
Yeah, okay. All right. So what you got for David?
Well, God. Now I feel like I need to go do some studying on some pop culture and some...
It's not going to happen. Don't worry about it.
No?
You're not going to.
Okay.
You're not interested in it.
David, you're so
yes.
cute. I
appreciate that.
I have such an important question for you. It's been driving me crazy. I wish that our listeners could see your background because I like the wood, whatever you got going on. But what is this little mariachi skeleton?
Yeah, it's a Mexican sugar skull skeleton.
Oh, any
just playing a mariachi.
Okay. Any meaning behind it?
So my podcast partner, Alan Kavana, and I, in addition to the podcast, we create 2-minute videos every weekend in advance of a NASCAR race. And every weekend I switch out the thing in that spot. So it's a different object every week. And I don't even think a discerning eye has caught it or has asked. Sometimes it's a die-cast race car.
That's my partner right here.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes it's something crazy. I do like Mexican sugar skulls.
Yeah.
I've got a potted plant where the pot is a Mexican sugar skull that I put up there. Yeah. So I do that just to keep it lively.
Well, it worked today. Yeah,
it worked because I can't stop. I was like, "What is that? And why is it there?"
And it's from Mexico.
Okay.
Well, there you go. I had a coworker bring it back for me from a previous job, and I've kept it.
That's awesome.
And before
it's not from what's that place
south of the border?
Yeah, south of the border.
No. We keep it authentic.
He's big time. Yeah, he's the major leagues now. So now 20 years ago, it's from south of the border.
Now that the really important question is out of the way, we can get to the.
Well, before you get to that, we do want to mention David's podcast is called Positive Regression.
Yes.
All right. So go check that out.
Okay. Time out because
that's your kind of.
I have no idea what a positive regression is, and I feel like I need to know what this is about. But
you know what category that falls into.
Mind junk?
No. What'd you talk about today on our mastermind group? Pattern
interrupt. Yeah.
Right. Positive regression.
It's a positive. Yeah, it's a pattern interrupt because I don't know what it is.
She loves pattern interrupts. Yes.
Well, it's an oxymoron for one. It's you can either regress or progress.
Right.
There is no positive regression, but it is a term that is thrown around in evaluation. And I'll put it in a NASCAR sense. If a driver is overachieving 1 year, then he would regress the next year. And then the flip side to that is if a driver is underachieving based on the expectation next season, positive regression, even though that's not really the proper term you use. But for us, it makes sense. We're that kind of podcast.
Well, you know why they underachieve.
So it's a podcast about racing.
It is. We call it the NASCAR podcast for the thinking fan. And my co-host Alan Kavana is one of the reporters on Pit Road for Fox Sports when they broadcast the NASCAR Truck Series. And we are of similar age, similar mind, and we do like to keep our podcast both intelligent and quirky, but also we don't want anything to do with what is a stereotypical NASCAR podcast or production. And a good example of that was last year during the NASCAR playoffs. Mike, you may remember this. A fight broke out after the Martinsville race. Joey Logano's crew member tried to fight Denny Hamlin. And while that was big on social media and was the talk of the town, the industry for an entire week, both Alan and I knew that, that's not for us. We're gonna discuss something else that absolutely fits within our niche and fits with what we do, because we have built this and we've built our audience. That audience has become a little something of a community that I'm pretty proud of. But it is the intelligent, inquisitive NASCAR fan, of which there are many. But you wouldn't have known that because prior to us, there weren't many, if not any at all, shows that spoke directly to them. And we've learned through some of the demographic studies that we've done that they are, on average, more educated, more affluent, and younger than the average NASCAR fan. So we feel that we are speaking directly to a very specific type of NASCAR fan when we do our podcast.
That's pretty cool. I've never heard of a NASCAR podcast. I'm sure that I knew that it might have existed, but definitely not the nerdy NASCAR podcast. I love it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I love stats and numbers. So I think if I were going to listen to one, that would be the one that I would want to listen to.
And that's where a lot of sports are going, is towards the analytics. Correctly used, they're invaluable. if you base it just on that, you sometimes don't get the whole picture, correct?
Yeah. So I've told folks, they'll point to analytics and say numbers never lie, and I'll say, oh no, they can lie. That it depends on the analyst, and that's where I get the most joy out of doing this. It isn't staring at spreadsheets and simply pointing to that. It's reading the number and then trying to do the forensics of it. You have to understand how that number came to be. That is the story, and that is the analysis that you're providing. So for me, the number it's not something that I point to and is the end all be all. The number is the beginning of the conversation. And that's how I build everything to do with my analysis and evaluation of all these drivers is, okay, we understand the numbers, whether it's good or bad. Now you have to understand how it came to be.
The story is the why. Why is the number 7?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what keeps folks coming back, right? Because I don't, there are great statistical reference sites for every sport. That isn't what I want to be. That's not what I have an interest in doing. It's the analysis and the understanding of this, the study of the sport really that makes the most sense to me.
Well, as a small business owner, which you are.
Yes. Officially, yes.
Yes, officially a small business owner. What are your top 3 tips for other small business owners?
I would say 1, have a niche, but also don't be afraid to have that niche evolve. Case in point, yes, I'm a NASCAR statistical analyst, but that doesn't mean that all I have to do are statistical analyses. Mike, we brought the Rolex 24 earlier. This past February, I stayed awake for 33 straight hours. I was embedded with Team Penske, which is historically one of the great teams in racing. And I wanted to capture the entire story of that race. I followed the drivers to their motorhomes, spoke with the team engineers, and in between was looking at live timing and scoring data to inject what is my normal statistical analysis. But clearly, because this was a grueling effort, it was unlike any kind of statistical analysis. So having the niche, you can stay true to a niche, but you have to grow around it. Mm-hmm. And that was the kind of story that pushed me as a writer, a storyteller, an analyst, everything in the direction of growth. And and by the way, it was for sports car racing, which is a sport that while I'm familiar, I'm not intimately familiar as I am in NASCAR. So it was something that really pushed me all in to focus and become better. And I think I got better for that.
Yeah, because you saw those cars twice a year, maybe.
If that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when I went in, January for the Rolex, you're bundled up and drinking your hot chocolate. Yes, and it's a little private party for you because it's just that kind of race. But this was different. I mean, this was a 24-hour crash course, literally, to understand the inner workings of what was happening in this race and what the team was doing. And oh, by the way, I had to articulate the statistical portion of this, which my readers are used to, in a manner which they've never seen before. So there was still the quest to provide something new and fresh on top of something that's familiar.
If you would like American motorsports racing with a flavor of Europe and F1, you and Scott 1 year need to rent a motorhome, grab a couple friends, like 3 couples, get a couple of motorhomes, park in the infield for the weekend of the Rolex 24 in January in Daytona. That'll be as good a party as you've been to in a long time.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I'm all for a good party.
Yeah, back in the day, we had a Ferris wheel in the infield.
What?
For the
It's
Rolex.
still there.
Oh, yeah.
The Ferris wheel's still there. Oh, yeah.
But yeah, that's because when NASCAR rolls into town, it gets very crowded and very corporate. And Rolex is a damn party. And it's nowhere near as many people. It goes overnight. So you could stay up all night if you wanted to, take a nap, 2 hours, every 2 hours, something like that. But you two would have fun in the infield. And with a couple, get three, four couples and go, oh yeah, you'd enjoy it. Tell Scott put that on the list for
baby. I know you're listening. Stick it on the list. Motorhome, Rolex.
Yep. There you go.
Boom.
Trust, and you'll
it's not a bad time.
No, you'll thank both of us when you get home. Yes,
you'll see plenty of exotic cars as well.
Yeah.
It's totally it is a car scene, kind of just to see and be seen kind of thing. It is. It's a trippy experience.
It is.
Sure.
You'll enjoy it.
So if you're in the infield, is there like a tunnel to get out?
Oh yeah, there's two.
Okay. All right. Because I'm a little claustrophobic, so I'm trying to figure out.
It's a 2.5 mile racetrack. There's plenty of room in the infield. Yeah, you'll be fine.
I think you'll be all right.
And it's open air.
You'll
it's
be
open air
just
too.
Open air?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, there's no roof on this racetrack, so yeah. God. Oh, you're killing me. All right, so what else you got for him? Because I don't want to get too NASCAR-ish. I want to stay on the business end of it because it's a great story.
It is.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm very intrigued because this is one of those things that I would like when you meet somebody. And if I were to meet you at a networking event or at Mike's house for Thanksgiving one year or something, and you told me what you did, I'd be like, what? That's a thing? Like, that's a job you can actually get paid for. That's a business you can actually run.
It is now.
It's really
you
cool.
and most other people.
Yeah.
But it's a paying job now because you made it, and that's the why.
Yeah.
The fact is it's a paying job, but it's the why and how you got there, and that's what I love about this story and have for years.
And what would you say has been the biggest hurdle that you've had to get over?
Ooh, that is a good question. I think it is taking something smart like statistics and trying to have a layperson understand it. I have to, I embrace my niche, but I also realize that I have to grow my audience. Mm-hmm. And in order to do that, I have to maybe not completely alter what I do, because in some respects, if I'm in a niche, I have to understand that there are going to be some folks that I'm just never going to be able to speak to. But at the same time, I want to create future opportunities for myself. Mm-hmm. So a good example, last year I made my television debut, first ever time I've been on TV. Woo-hoo! It was for local area Fox in Charlotte. They do their own pre-race show, but the things that they discuss on the pre-race show are fairly generic, mm-hmm. Even for NASCAR fans. So the puzzle of taking a smart concept like some of the things that I do and packaging it as something that is digestible to just a casual viewing audience,
right,
is tough. And if I don't,
you don't want to be speaking over their heads because they're going to be super confused.
And if
I don't grasp how to do that, I'm in a lot of trouble, right? And I won't be asked back to do things like this. So it's having to, for me, recognize which audience I'm speaking to. I mean, you've seen this, if you're going to small business conferences or looking at political candidates. I mean, speeches change based on the audiences that are viewing them. Mm-hmm. But the core principles of what you're discussing stay the same. It's just the package changes. And sometimes for me, that can be tough to identify. So having to speak generically about an incredibly specific subject, I would call that my biggest hurdle.
I would say that would be a pretty big one,
yeah.
Especially taking something that's incredibly cerebral and putting it in layman's terms so people can understand it and not completely get lost. Because I mean, I know that sometimes even when I'm watching like Sports Center or something, I'm like, what? Huh? I'm confused.
Yeah, it's very so it's important. You have to. It's okay to have something that is smart, but for me, I realize that my ego does not need to be a part of this. I can do some of the most brilliant NASCAR analysis ever, but if the message that I'm trying to convey, if it does not resonate, then I have failed. There are some really smart philosophers and smart writers that I think the world of, and I've read some of their books, and they're pretty heady. And I actually kind of took that to think, well, if they had retailored their content to speak to a broader audience, their message would have been received by a bigger audience and understood. And I think that is, if you're a storyteller, that is what you are supposed to be doing. So I considered that a failing. So trying to adapt to that can be tricky.
So David, if you were not doing stats and analytics for NASCAR,
right,
what would you do it for?
I'd be doing stats analysis or something else.
The NBA, the Spurs.
I can only dream. San Antonio or Tottenham, Mike. It doesn't really matter.
We're together on that. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's been kind of one track mind for me. I was one of the boys in high school who said they were going to be a general manager of a team someday, and they were going to win rings and do all those sorts of things. Well, I never deviated from that track. I just kept going, and I evolved as a writer and an analyst. And I don't know if you can see behind me, but there is a ring on that wall that I received for a team that I was consulting with that ended up winning Daytona.
Wow,
so
nice.
I was able to achieve kind of what I set out to do. It just branched off into something else. There was one day I was working for Spire Sports and Entertainment, which is currently one of the bigger NASCAR agencies. And a gentleman by the name of Lenny Baticki, who was actually in Mike's role, but at Gateway Raceway many years ago. He was working there, and he just stopped me one day, and it was a hard day. If you're working with young race car drivers, then you're working with driver parents, and those parents can be overwhelming at times. And he stopped me and said, "You know what? You don't need to be doing this. You need to be talking about the sport and sharing the things that because you'll be able to build an audience." And that was, for me, a pivot point. That's what led me into refurbishing my website, motorsportsanalytics.com, and going down this path. And I appreciate that. It's led me to, I never imagined that I'd be writing for, Washington Post and Sports Illustrated and The Athletic, and now for Forbes as a contributor, in addition to my work on Motorsports Analytics.
Atlantic high school grad makes good, right?
I would say it's been, they could name the journalism wing after me, right?
You would think it's a no-brainer, right?
It was a pivot from what I was on, but the focus never really altered much.
But you process that information. It's one thing to listen to somebody say that, and then did I process it? And you obviously did. Yeah,
it's a hard realization to kind of understand what the ceiling was. And at the time, that was when, post-recession NASCAR was hit pretty hard. When I first got hired by an agency in the Charlotte area, the economy was good, and driver development, which meant teams were signing young drivers on their own and taking them up the ladder and trying to create stars out of them. That was a regular thing. So scouts were a necessity. Post-recession, scouts were no longer a necessity because teams were asking these young drivers to find money on their own. And the opportunities dried up, and it got really stressful. I was never fired or laid off for many of these agencies, thankfully, because I was able to wear different hats. I was able to write press releases and build websites and run communications training in addition to the scouting. But there were some hairy and stressful times. And this was a colleague of mine that I hold dear. I still talk to him to this day, that just saw maybe not a way out, but an opportunity far past the one that I had. And I'm glad that he had that foresight, because he was right. If I'm going to have a future in the sport, it's going to have to be one that I create myself. Mm-hmm. And no one else is really blazing the trail for what I do. I just have to take it a day at a time and create something new, and eventually the big pot of gold at the end.
Which is pretty cool because not many people get the opportunity to blaze a trail or do something new.
No, I'm fortunate.
Pretty rare. Yeah. And it's also awesome because you can't F it up because it's never been done before. So no matter what you do, it's the best thing.
Yeah, no, trust me. I've effed it up plenty of times. There was an opportunity this year during the onset of COVID. My freelance agreement with The Athletic was eliminated, and I had recognized some things that I needed to do for the home website, motorsportsanalytics.com. And I took that time to do, I would estimate about 3 months of work refurbishing the website, making it more reader friendly, making it look like nothing NASCAR has ever seen. If you've seen the logo, there's pink, there's teal. The website has cartoons instead of photographs. I don't want to spend money with a photography service because that's just going to kill my profit margin. Mm-hmm. That just doesn't make sense to do that. On top of that, I've written the volume 1 of a prospect ebook that features 5 up and coming NASCAR drivers with just a deep analysis and statistical highlights. That has never been done in the sport. And I just want to see what happens if I put it out there in the world. And there is no one that is going to give me an opportunity to do that except for me. So if I had the time and the wherewithal to do it, I might as well take the shot.
Very cool.
I like the advice you took. And your dad had that same effect on me way back when I was offered the Daytona USA job. He and I had a nice conversation, and it changed my trajectory, I think. So I'm glad people out there are paying it forward. So, who's the picture over your left shoulder?
That is my wife, Tiffany, and I with young race car driver Logan Ruffin.
I remember that name.
Yeah, you may have been in some fantasy baseball leagues with him back in the day, but he competed in the old USAR Pro Cup series, and he was very good. He won Rookie of the Year his rookie season. The other rookie was Chase Elliott. So he was one of the drivers that I got closest to, really working hard with him, got him a development deal with Turner Motorsports. And eventually the money ran out and he couldn't continue past that, but he's doing fine now. He works for Coca-Cola and is also a realtor and is married, and it's good. But for me, that was a moment in time that I spent a significant amount of time traveling the series with that young fellow. And that was a race at New Smyrna Speedway where Tiffany, when we were dating, came and visited, and we got that picture. So I had to keep that one.
Here's my connection with Chase Elliott real quick before we go. He's one of the more popular drivers on the NASCAR circuit, young kid. Back in the day when I was with the Cartoon Network, we were on the 29 car. We were never good, but we had all the Cartoon Network. We had Scooby-Doo and everybody on the hood, so all the parents wanted to buy the merchandise for the kids. So when we went to Charlotte or Daytona, I would escort a mascotted ballet dancer in the Scooby costume, and I'd take him everywhere, and we get pictures and all that stuff. And so we could go wherever I could literally go wherever I wanted to with Scooby, right? And so we're down on pit road for the driver introductions. This was back in the day when Dale Earnhardt, Jeff Gordon, Bill Elliott, and all those guys. Chase Elliott's dad, Bill, was one of the hot drivers back then. And here's like a 3-year-old Chase on his shoulder wanting to hug Scooby-Doo. So that's my connection with Chase Elliott.
Oh,
it means nothing to you, but yeah.
No.
Yeah, but so
the only connection I have to NASCAR is that I've been to the Charlotte Motor Speedway, and it was for a rock festival.
And who'd you see? Anybody any good?
Oh, it was Carolina Rebellion. I saw like 40 different bands.
Oh, okay.
Really hard rock, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And that was it. That's the only.
Yeah, well.
But it'll change, because after this, you've definitely piqued my interest in
the Rolex.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
David, you have a wonderful I started my story. And that's what I've always admired about that, because you you kept at it. Like I said, you did two things right. You started and you kept at it.
Yeah.
And the benefits came from that.
Yeah. And it took a lot of time. It can get frustrating at times, but if you believe in what you're doing, if you are doing it well, and if it's something you like, then keep at it. And as long as it's growing incrementally, for me anyway, that was enough feedback to just keep pressing forward. And still is. Every podcast episode, we're getting more downloads. Every article I write is getting more views, and that is that doesn't happen overnight. It just, I know you see tweets with stories that seem like clickbait. That isn't how it works.
No, nope.
Most of the time, it's just it's not.
There's no such thing as an overnight success.
But just incrementally, that growth is enough feedback for me to keep going.
Where can people find you?
They can find me on Twitter at David Smith MA. The website is motorsportsanalytics.com. And the podcast, wherever you get your podcast, is Positive Regression, a Motorsports Analytics podcast.
Awesome. And for our listeners, we appreciate you. And, we love our analytics about the show. And I'm hoping that after this episode, we log on and we see that we have so many more subscribers, and that you've shared us, and that you've gone out and you've left us a 5-star review.
I'll have to boost this in the NASCAR markets because your name's good. So we're going to tread on it for a few weeks, right?
I hope I can help.
This has been a blast for me, David, because like I said, we've known each other for years, and I've loved the story from day one because, like I said, you just kept going. That's what I like best about the story.
And
the
I've
rewards,
learned some nuggets.
I hope you get many, but you just kept going. That's what I was so impressed with.
I appreciate that.
Yep.
Well, this has been a blast. We can't wait till next time, and we'll see you next time on the Wired to Change podcast.